Well, what an incredible weekend of footy. There were upsets galore as top teams got toppled. The D's grabbed their chance while the Eagles finally broke through. We've got plenty to unpack as the twists continue in season 2023. This is Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com.
And victory doesn't come any sweeter.
Frederick throws it on the boot. It's hanging up in the breeze. Frederick with one of the goals of the season.
The Giants are in seventh heaven. They've won 7 in a row for the first time in their history.
Right or left? The left is absolutely right. 4 for Tex.
Happy Monday. Great to have your company. Damian Barrett and Matthew Lloyd are with me. What a wild weekend of football. How many tips did you guys get?
I'm embarrassed too.
I think I scrounged the 4 or 5, Nat, but
I got 1.
I'm bad tipster, as you know.
You're embarrassed. I got 1. Awful. I don't know how you got 4.
I'm a bad tipster. That's how I ended up getting a result this week.
Well, hey, I want to get, first of all, off the top, your biggest winner from this weekend. Lloydie, we'll start with you.
For me, I just love what the Giants are doing, and it's a tough place to win, Ballarat, and to come from the clouds and win that, they're my biggest winner.
I'm equally as impressed with Carlton, Nat. They've got 1 less win on the streak that the Giants have got, but it's to me, it's a more impressive streak, and beating Collingwood on Friday night, it just established what they've been doing.
Incredible turnaround for both of those seasons with the Giants and the Blues. What about who's vulnerable and who are you most worried about at this point?
I've been worried about Geelong for a while, and they're now losing games in Geelong. So they lost to the Giants earlier, now to Fremantle. Injuries and out of form. I don't like how their midfield's going either.
Yeah, to me it's the Bulldogs, Nat. There's a lot of good teams. I still put Geelong in the mix beneath them who can still make it in my eyes. Swans are coming, Richmond's still hanging around, and they're losing matches that they shouldn't lose when they're 35 points up. I don't like it.
All right, we will unpack those 2 teams in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but Melbourne was actually a top 8 team that got a win. It was a thrilling victory against the Tigers at the MCG yesterday, and it means that their top 2 chances, or a top 2 finish, are still in play. And Lloydie, for weeks we have questioned their forward line, but have they found an answer now in Harrison Petty?
He looks comfortable, so to me I don't see it as just like it's a one-off where a backman's kick 6. He looked at home, he's jumping on heads, he knew how to work the 50 with his leading patterns, so he'll trouble you. And I just think Goodwin has had such a great month with his coaching, like to make that Grundy move, to get Pickett in the midfield, to get Petrarca forward, to get Petty forward, to bring Melsham back. Fantastic, and I was a doubter on Melbourne, but I'm not anymore in what they can achieve because of what he's done from the coaches' box.
He was recruited as a forward, wasn't he?
Was.
And there was a moment in that semi-final loss last year, Nat, where they moved him forward. He kicked the goal late. Now, they weren't going to win the game, but he just gave them something. It's just proof that games are never dead from a big picture perspective, and I agree with you. He does look at home. Van Rooyen, 4, Melksham, he's become the Jamie Elliott of the Demons, hasn't he, in his clutch moments.
And let's not forget Bailey Fritsch still to possibly return to this team. Now, D's skipper Max Gawn was just immense yesterday. In that final term, when they needed someone to stand up, he stood tall, 13 touches and 7 clearances in the last quarter, 100% game time. And Damo, you made a case for him on AFL Daily last week to be the All-Australian ruckman. This is strengthening by the minute on this performance.
Yeah, and there's still 4 weeks of runway left for him to enhance those credentials. I'd argue the last 3 weeks have been the best we've seen, and we've already talking about a 6-time All-Australian ruckman. I think he's had some good matches earlier this year. The rounds 1 to 17, we didn't play all of those games, but in that period of time, he's doubled his output in the 3 matches since that period. He's doubled in hit-outs, 20 to 40. He's doubled in clearances, more than doubled, 3 to 8. And he's marking more in that same period of time. The Grundy project that was done 3 weeks ago, it's officially done now.
Well, the sell to him was you can either have a 7th All-Australian or a 2nd premiership, but it's flipped the other way now. They need him to be the sole ruckman for the 2nd premiership. So that's what's good he's thought by bringing Grundy in and help him win a 2nd flag, but they need him 1 out, so it's trouble for Grundy.
Just on that, do you agree that he's still an All-Australian chance?
Well, he's the best player, best ruckman by the length of the straight at the moment, so another 4 games like that, I'd have him All-Australian ruckman.
Does Grundy even get back in? I mean, yesterday for Casey, he had 31 hit-outs, which suggests he didn't play as a forward.
As harsh as it is, Nat, he wasn't sold the dream to hone forward craft, which is what the club said publicly 3 weeks ago, and they omitted him. It's just been a tough decision, a tough conversation. It's hard for Brodie. I feel for him, but Melbourne has become a significantly better team without him in it.
And you can't flirt with your form now. So there's no place in the forward line, there's no place in the ruck.
From the MCG to Optus Stadium, and it was sweet relief for the West Coast Eagles. They finally broke the drought, getting their second win of the season. Lloydie, what would have been most pleasing for Adam Simpson? We can see, obviously, the players are happy, but it is more relief than anything, isn't it?
You're spot on. This was just two teams, bottom teams going at it, and they both didn't play amazing football, but for the West Coast Eagles, it was good for them to start well, put pressure on, then they respond in the third. But look at these scenes. This was a coach that's been absolute under siege and just getting some reward for all his effort as well. When you just got to keep fronting up to your team and telling them, okay, if we do this, we might be a chance. If we do the same for Brett Ratton too. That's been a horror year for them, but got some good contributions from the old and the young. Well,
let's talk about North Melbourne, Dame. I want to get your thoughts because they launched a late comeback, but they were scoreless in that third term. It wasn't a great performance. Brett Ratton hands back the reins officially to Alistair Clarkson today. Do we expect anything to change? And what is the answer to their woes right now?
I don't know about what the answer is, Nat, but I don't, again, subscribe to what some are already doing. It was a gallant effort, it was a good effort. No, the lack of a score in the third quarter was their problem. Again, we've got 17 losses in a row. They're playing the equal worst team in the competition, and they don't, again, get the result. And this sort of mentality now where they're working behind the scenes to try and get more assistance through the draft, it's just self-defeating in that this attitude just pervades the footy club. And if they do get assistance again, and whatever form it comes in, whether they get access to the National Academy kid or the compensation for loss of a Ben Mackay, it has to come with strings attached as to how they use that pick and how they develop it, because access to talent hasn't been a problem. It's development of the talent once they get it.
So there needs to be some changes behind the scenes then?
I feel so, Nat. I mean, this is 4 years now of either finishing last or second last on a ladder, and there's no guarantee that they're going to go anywhere near up the ladder next year. OK, so both North Melbourne and West Coast are going to feature in our new segment next week, Lloydie's Exit Lounge. Cannot wait for this. Lloydie, you are going to take a look at some of the teams and what they need over the off-season in order to improve. So cannot wait for this segment.
I look forward to it. So we'll talk about this year, what went wrong, and also try and give some hope for what the clubs need to do in the off-season. OK,
so make sure you tune in next week. Lloydie's Exit Lounge will be making its debut. Now, one team that bucked the upset trend on the weekend was the Saints. They played the Hawks, and it was shaky there for a little while. And the third week in a row, they've kind of battled against a cellar dweller, but they got the 4 points. They keep themselves in touch with the top 8. Where did they show signs of improvement,
Well,
Lloyd?
I thought Ross coached well. Take down James Sicily and you take down Hawthorn, and I thought the Sharman job and the way Sharman played off him and hurt him was really strong. So it's Sicily or bust at the moment, unfortunately, for Hawthorn, which doesn't say a lot for others. And I also thought the midfield of Crouch kicking 3 goals and the burst speed from there, and to kick 9 goals, that's what we'll see Mitchell shortly. Saints can't really score very well. Ross has been frustrated with their inability to score, but to concede 9 in the first quarter, that was poor from Hawthorn.
Yeah, it was a horror opening term from the Hawks. And as you mentioned, Sam Mitchell, the coach, was not impressed at all. Midfield group copped it initially. And Dame, I reckon he's actually been pretty neutral in the coach's box this season, but yesterday was the first time we saw a fair bit of emotion and frustration boil over.
Yeah, it was, and what he will gain out of that, or at least reflect upon, he got a response. I mean, they did respond to that 9-goal first quarter. I mean, it's not enough, and you sit here after round 20, 19 completed matches, and there's 5 wins only. 2 of those are against the second bottom team in North, and one of them's against West Coast. So it hasn't been a great year. I know there's been some narrow losses, Nat. I know there's been some improvement, but ultimately they're coming off an 8-win season last year, and here he is having these sorts of moments at quarter time of round 20.
And no doubt his mood would have gone from bad to worse with Sam Frost and this little incident that really killed the momentum, because the Hawks were coming really hard at St Kilda at this point. They were back in the game. They had all the run, and then just a silly act here from Sam Frost, Lloydie. I mean, he'd hate to watch that back.
I know Collingwood have a rule where they'll go in and support each other, but the rule is you cannot do anything to a point where you give away a free kick. So it might be if there's 2 wrestling, a second Collingwood player who comes in, but don't do anything. Keep in control that you can't give the umpires a reason to pay a free kick. So, that was a momentum killer at that point because the Hawks were coming hard.
And Sicily knows what that feels like, Nat, to give away a free kick at that point in time, but you can see his composure.
I love
as opposed to
how
Frost.
he just grabbed the ball and just breathed for a moment. Don't do anything silly. To the Giants now, and their hot run of form has continued. 7 wins in a row now after their comeback win against the Bulldogs in Ballarat. that. And it was their fast ball movement in the second half that turned this game on its head, Lloydie. Really a 2.0 of the Orange Tsunami.
Yeah, it was, Nat. And they've been lauded for their team defence and their defensive matchup. So you can see huge numbers back, but then they got the Dogs badly. Like, the Dogs would be shattered. They've been questioned for about 18 months, the Dogs, with their defence, and their defence was exposed. I know they've lost a few.
Well, they lost Bruce on the run and Keith as well with a concussion, and the unknown about Bruce, it might be second ACL. But so they were deficient down back, but this doesn't sort of justify the midfield breaking down the way they did.
You shouldn't lose from where they were. To be up by 6 goals and in Ballarat at home. But once you allow a team to run and get their confidence up, there was just no pressure on the ball carrier.
Does their form stack up, Lloyd, the way you read it now? They're finishing round 20 inside the 8. Does it stack up with a finals campaign?
Oh, yeah. I want them to make it because of... they'll just serve it up to anybody with the way they're playing. Yeah, I think if your defence is sound, you can do anything.
Now, as we know, they've now won at 9 different venues this year. It's an extraordinary stat in itself, and it's just as proof that they can take their game anywhere. And to turn it around from a 3-win, 7-loss start to the year to the point they have, with genuine hope, and with Toby Green playing the best footy of an already extraordinarily good career, it's full testament to him and Adam Kingsley, the way they've... transformed themselves.
I think the Giants will be a threat should they make September. The Dogs, on the other hand, well, they might not even make the 8 now. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. They've slipped to 8th. Do we need to put the blowtorch and the pressure on them a little bit? Because on paper, you look at the talent on their list, they should be doing far better than they are.
They should be, but history says they don't. They're never once under the 8 completed years of Luke Beveridge finished in a top 4 situation. So, they are what they are. They could get in there again and win a final as they've done, but they're not top 4.
Speaking of teams who aren't top 4 at the moment, it's the reigning premiers in Geelong, and they're looking very shaky at the moment. They were stunned by the Dockers on Saturday at their home venue, and it was Freo's smaller, quicker players in attack that Geelong really struggled with.
Yeah, and too many quick exits out of the midfield here, but the Bombers used to have a slogan, speed kills, and I think you've got to do that to Geelong. If you can get speed on the ball and little small dynamic forwards that can get a hold of them. So again, beautiful tap there from Luke Jackson, and Fredericks and Schultz and Switkowski just got a hold of them, and Walters.
You've had the slows on the Cats all year. I probably incorrectly, Lordo and Nat, were feeling they were just going to do enough to get there and still cause some carnage. But losing around 20 game at home to this dreadful team on exposed form in 2023, it's far from ideal. And what we saw in this game, Lordo, was probably what you've been seeing in the lead up to it.
Yeah, I just think when you're 8th and 9th around round 17, 18, that's what always had me doubting them. And I think because they're Geelong and because of what they did last year, they've had too many credits. But I think they're just an average side into 2023.
Port Adelaide, Collingwood, St Kilda and the Dogs. That's their final 4 games. Hawkins, whether he plays in the next couple of weeks, Blitzard's hamstring looks bad. He definitely won't. The premiership defence is certainly hanging by a thread. Look, a massive talking point out of the weekend was a collision in the showdown between Lachie Jones and Aliir. Now, Damo, the AFL put out a statement last night. They say they're going to continue to speak with Port Adelaide's medical team over its management of Aliir. Where do you stand on this situation?
Well, they need to ask the hardest questions of all time, Nat, about what happened here, because we see these two players clash accidentally. Obviously, Jones put through a proper test in that he was put through the concussion protocols and was subbed out. Now, the club has said he's subbed out with a migraine. Now, I think that needs to be asked the question of too, because with a migraine, it allows him to be available for next week, not with a concussion. So again, that question hopefully needs to be asked, and why Aliir wasn't put through, Lloydie, the full scat test, and not just play semantics with the head
HIA
injury assessment as opposed to the full concussion test. Again, there may well be valid answers for that, but let's put it all on the table. Let the public consume what they find, because it's not a good look. At the very least, it's a really bad optic.
Given the current climate where we have lawsuits galore, do we need to move to, I guess, an NFL model where they have independent doctors assessing concussions on a match day?
I believe so, and have for some time, because while I don't doubt the professionalism and credentials and credibility of club doctors, in the heat of the moment, history has shown that some decisions are made in a way that are different to the cool of the moment. And that's not having a specific crack at the Port Adelaide doctor. Let the system and let the AFL questions play out. But yeah, back to your question, I think as start of 2024, independent doctors to assess all matters.
OK, we'll see how this incident plays out across the course of the week. AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app, of course, for all of your updates. Now, Aaliyah went on, played the game, but dazed or not, he had his hands full with Tex Walker, who put on an absolute show on Saturday night. 7 goals in a standout performance. Lloydie, I was staggered to learn that he has not had an All-Australian blazer at this point of his career. Could he be on track for one?
Well, I think he's playing the best football of his life and at this age. So I never saw him as a power forward for the first part of his career, but he is in the latter part of his career. And obviously what he's doing to Port, that's a big question mark on them. Can they win a flag because they can't hold forwards like Tex Walker? But I hope we remember him when he's done as the best kick that the game's probably seen as left and right foot. He's just a special
No one kicks a drop punt like him.
They don't. He's just like a laser beam. But yeah, he and Curnow look to be the best forwards in the game right now.
In 2012, when they just missed the grand final, lost the prelim final, he kicked a heap of goals that year. Round 5 the next year was done with his knee. Hasn't been the same until about 2 years ago. So he's lost a large chunk of his career from that knee injury, but back to 2012 form.
6 goals behind Charlie Curnow in the Coleman medal race. Adelaide play West Coast in the final round. So that'll be interesting. It's going to go down to the wire. Now, the Suns won their first Q Clash since 2018. It put a dent in the Lions' top 2 hopes, and there would be some concern when we talk about Brisbane and their defensive lapses, Lloydie.
It is. You can't switch it on and off, Nat, and that's what they're doing at the moment. Brisbane, you want to keep believing, and they can be so good against Geelong, so bad against Melbourne, and then so bad against the Gold Coast Suns. So they're having weeks on and weeks off, and that's what you can't do to win a premiership. We want to trust them, and they can look so good, Damo, and then look so bad, and it was a shocker on the weekend.
Yeah, tell me, a lot of people brushed off the unavailability for the rest of the year of Will Ashcroft with his knee. Is it a bigger issue, particularly when you see Anderson just positioning himself here?
Damo, he misses that one, and then moments later they just leave him out the back. Yeah, so you're right. You take out a player like Ashcroft, you don't really replace him. There's no one of his quality.
And he's not allowing Anderson that space if he's playing.
No, he's not. So, no, it was a poor performance. That with so much at stake, they want to finish top 2, so it's a shocking. And then this is Zorko and Miller. Like, Miller's the hardest working midfielder in the game, a 2-way runner. And this Miller is the hardest working. Lachie Neale just did not really want to go with him or work hard enough or finger point enough. And this bit of play summed up the day for the Suns and summed up the day for the Brisbane Lions of just how good one was and how poor the other side was.
And that's why Tuke Miller won his 4th Ashcroft medal for the best player on the ground in the Q Clash. To Carlton now, and the Blues charge towards September has continued after a big win over the top of the table Pies, and their intensity and pressure around the footy was excellent on a Friday night, Damo.
Well, it's just transportable now. We've seen it against some lesser lights. They got their own season going with a massive second quarter against Gold Coast 6 weeks ago. They've had other good wins against lesser teams, but to then produce it as they did 3 weeks ago against Port Adelaide, but more particularly against Collingwood on the Friday night, it stacks up. And the tough conversations they all had where they looked at each other in the eye and said, you're not doing enough. And that was sent back to the coaches as much as to the players, but they all embraced it. And we get to Friday night, round 20, they win 6 in a row, and they pulled Collingwood apart.
It was a ruthless performance. Being there on the night and just, I thought Collingwood started really well for about 15 minutes, and then Carlton with a tougher, harder side from probably halfway through the first quarter, and 33 plus contested possessions. And watch Nick Dacos in a play here. He was nervous and spooked, and he just didn't want to go. Here it is. See, they worried them out of it. Nick Newman gave it to him afterwards. So this was a ruthless Carlton side. It wasn't pretty, it was just repeat entry, pressure, repeat entry. That's how you win big games of finals footy.
Again, do you see it being sustained?
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. It's been sustainable for 6 weeks, so there's no reason why they can't keep going.
Well, Blues fans are certainly up and about. And speaking of the Blues, that's where our crypto brave play comes from. And Sam Doherty, we know the bravery he's shown off the field, but on field he's just as courageous, Lloyd. And look at this, putting his body on the line numerous times and showing no fear against the Pies.
Oh, he's been through so much, this guy, with knees and the testicular cancer, and then just to come back and just keep putting his body on the line. He's one of the reasons, without Sam Walsh on the weekend, that they won that game of football.
Now, Collingwood, one aspect that maybe the Pies want to look at is Taylor Adams maybe not being the man you want delivering the ball inside 50. not the greatest kick that we saw on Friday night.
No, look, and there wasn't a lot of space for him to work with, and of his game, the kicking side of it is probably not its strongest suit, but it was exposed on the weekend, Nat, when he had to pinpoint certain moments and didn't, and missed by some way. So, again, Lloyd, he knows, and he's been quite public about how he's needing to do everything he can to stay in the team, and I fully expect him to, but performances like that...
Yeah. And the problem is they've got so many with bringing Mitchell in. It's squeezing guys out into positions that they don't really suit. Like Tom Mitchell should never be on the forward line.
Yeah.
Taylor Adams shouldn't really be a half-forward flanker. They've probably got too many of the same type, and McRae's trying to find roles for them elsewhere. It at times hasn't suited them.
Now, one of the big storylines from the weekend is Buddy Franklin, the Swans superstar, subbed out of the game against Essendon with calf tightness on Saturday night. Now, this would be terrible, Damo, if we weren't to see him again, given there's only 4 games left and the Swans probably won't make finals.
No, well, even if they are alive, Nat, do you want to bring him back for that round 24 game? And it's the runway's short now for Buddy with a 36-year-old person doing a calf injury. Unfortunately, it may well have been the last time we see him after 19 seasons of one of the grandest careers we've ever seen, and an instant, not just Hall of Fame induction, but legend status in my eyes when it happens.
Yeah, I know. It would be such a shame if we weren't to see him again. So let's hope that maybe it is just the tightness we all think. That leads us into quick gives now. And Lloydie, I've got a Buddy question for you. If he does sign on for 1 more year, should it only be if the Swans make it a performance-based contract?
I just think, no, he'd just agree to a fee, Buddy Franklin. I wouldn't put him on performance-based because he's been good for so long, but I hope he hangs them up in style and we can celebrate him, hopefully, for one last game.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
In a month's time. To you, Damo, is it a bad look to have Taylor Harris in a professional boxing fight just 6 weeks out from round 1 of the AFL?
Yeah, it is a bad look. I love the athletes who pursue 2 sports, and Taylor has done that successfully, but we've just spent a fair bit of time talking about head knocks in the AFL system, and to willingly and invite punches to their head within the preparedness for an AFL season, it's not a good look. I didn't like it, and again, I don't want to diminish someone's chances at a second sport, but boxing and AFL just don't go right now in my eyes. Nat, should Fox Footy have sent its commentators to Adelaide for a showdown?
It was a massive game. It's an hour-and-a-half flight. Yes. Would have been great to be there.
Agree more.
Damo, to you, if Carlton doesn't make the finals from here, is the season a failure?
Yeah, we're in the win-loss caper, Nat. They're now in the win caper with 6 in a row. They've turned the season around. It would now be a waste for them to not capitalise on that. So, absolutely would be. Lloydie, would you rather a 25-year-old Ben Mackay or a 27-year-old Tom Barras?
I'm a big Barras fan, so yeah, I'd take the 27-year-old. To you, Nat, instead of having the bye between round 24 and the finals, would it be better having it between the prelims and the grand final?
I just go back to that Optus Stadium grand final a couple of years ago where we had 2 weeks drawn out until the grand final and it was torture. So no to that. To both of you, an early call for next season. Who will win the wooden spoon in 2024, if you can call it a win?
North.
And I'll go the Eagles.
Okay, all right. Don't forget to put your tips in for the AFL's official tipping competition with thanks to Crypto.com. A couple of early tips, please. Dogs and Tigers Friday night, Lloydie.
I'll go the Tigers.
Yeah, I'll go Tigers too.
Yep, Geelong and Port on Saturday night, GMHBA Stadium. This is going to be an absolute cracker.
Last chance for Cats.
Yeah, I'll give them the last chance as well.
Ooh, last chance for the Cats. All right, we will be back on Monday with plenty more Access All areas. In the meantime, enjoy your week.